More than 60 years later, the Moors murders remains one of Britain's most notorious criminal cases, and questions still linger about whether all the victims have been found. Ian Brady was born as Ian Duncan Stewart on 2nd of January 1938 in Gorbals, a notoriously rough area of Glasgow, Scotland. His background was defined by neglect, severe behavioural issues, and a rapid descent into petty crime and the radical ideological obsessions. He was the illegitimate son of Margaret Peddy Stewart, an unmarried tea room waitress, and his biological father's name was never confirmed. His mother him put him up for adoption because she couldn't look after him. But in those days, it was a lot different than it is now. So she put in an advert in a shop window looking for adoption parents when he was 4 months old. He was taken in by a foster family by the names of Mary and John Sloane, a local Glasgow couple who he grew up using their surname as Ian Sloane. He had a violent temper as a child and tended to have lots of tantrums. Childhood acquaintances noticed the regularly tortures and killed local animals. Despite being intelligent enough to attend the respected Shorelands Academy, he became a local troublemaker, ran a gang, and repeatedly broke into other people's homes. After multiple appearances in juvenile court for breaking into people's houses, a judge gave him probation on in condition he left Glasgow, so he moved to Manchester. Before his 17th birthday, he moved to Manchester to live with his birth mother and her new husband, Patrick Brady. He legally took his stepfather's surname. He quickly continued his criminal activities in Manchester. After being caught stealing lead seals at his market job, he was sent to Strangeways Prison and served a 2-year sentence in a youth detention centre. While in youth detention centre, Brady learned bookkeeping, but also became an alcoholic. He started becoming obsessed with Adolf Hitler as well. When he left the youth detention centre, he got a job as a stock clerk at a distribution company. In 1961, a 17-year-old girl called Myra Hindley started working as a secretary at his company. Hindley became infatuated with Brady. Brady manipulated Hindley into his world of dark philosophy and Nazi obsession, which has escalated into their campaign of child abduction and murder, starting in 1963. Myra Hindley was born on the 23rd of July 1942 in Gorton, a working class area of Manchester. Her early life was shaped by an abusive household, personal tragedy, and a teenage transformation that ultimately led to her meeting Ian Brady. She was the first child of Nellie and Thomas Hindley. Her father was an alcoholic World War II veteran who regularly beat her and her mother. Following the birth of her sister Maureen in 1946, the family's flat became too crowded. Hindley was sent to live by nearby with her maternal grandmother, Ellen Maybury. At the end of 15, a close neighbourhood friend, 13-year-old Michael Higgins, drowned in a local disused clay pit. Hindley had been invited to go swimming with him, but declined. His death really traumatized her, and she converted to Roman Catholic. Shortly after, she left school at 15 and began working as a junior clerk at a local engineering company. In her late teens, Hindley changed her appearance. She bleached her hair blonde, wore, wore a lot of makeup, and adopted a tough, streetwise persona. At the age of 17, she became engaged to a local man but she broke off the end of the engagement just after a few months. In January 1961, she started the job as a secretary where she met Brady. Hindley and Brady became a double act of luring and unaliving young people. Their first victim was a girl called Pauline Reed, who was a 16-year-old who was the neighbour of Hindley. Hindley spotted Pauline waiting at a local disco and offered her a lift in a rented car, claiming she had lost a glove on Saddleworth's Moor and wanted help finding it. Once she was on the moor, Ian Brady turned up and was essayed and had her throat cut. The second victim was 12-year-old boy called John Kilbride, who was visiting Ashton-under-Lyne Market to earn money by helping stallholders. Hindley approached John at the market and offered him a lift home. Instead, she drove him to Saddleworth Moor, where Brady was waiting. John was essayed and strangled. This was the first body discovered by police during their initial search of the moors. The third victim was 12-year-old Keith Bennett, who vanished while walking to his grandmother's house. Hindley lured Keith into her car by asking him to help her load some boxes. Hindley drove to Saddleworth Moor, where Brady took Keith up a hill and he was essayed and strangled. Despite police searches of the moors over the years, his body has never been found. The fourth victim was Leslie Ann Downey, and she was a 10-year-old girl who went missing from a fairground near her home in Ancoats, Manchester. Brady and Hindley lured Leslie to their home by promising her a lift and some sweets. Leslie was held captive, forced to strip, gagged, essayed, and strangled. Hindley and Brady recorded her crying and pleading for her mother on a tape recorder and took naked pictures of her. Hindley and Brady buried her at Saddleworth Moor and was recovered by police in October 1965. Their fifth victim was Edward Evans, a 17-year-old apprentice engineer who Brady met at Manchester railway station. Brady invited Edward back to his house on the pretense of a social drink. Brady had also invited Myra Hindley's 17-year-old brother-in-law, David Smith, to the house that night so he could witness the crime. In front of Smith, Brady brutally attacked Edward with an axe and strangled him with an electrical cord. Brady intended to involve Smith in getting rid of the body, but instead a terrified Smith feigned cooperation and went home and called the police immediately. Officers arrived at the house the next day to find Edward's body wrapped in plastic upstairs, bringing an end to Brady and Hindley's crimes. The search of Saddleworth Moor was hard for all involved. It was psychologically draining, and the search lasted decades and is still going on now. In the 1980s, Hindley and Brady confessed to more victims, so more searches took place. In this day and age, technology has developed and police have started to use drones to search for more victims. The trial of Brady and Hindley took place over a 14-day period between 19th of April and 6th of May 1966. It remains one of the most shocking and tightly secured legal proceedings in British history. Brady was charged with the unaliving of Edward Evans, Leslie Ann Downey, and John Kilbride. Hindley was charged with the unaliving of Edward Evans and Leslie Ann Downey, and with harbouring Brady, knowing he had unalived John Kilbride. They both pleaded not guilty and remained calm throughout the trial. The main evidence in the trial was a tape recording, which was a 16-minute audio. The tape captured agonising screams and pleas from a 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey as she was being abused and unalived. Everyone was in tears when they heard the recording. The prosecution found photos in the couple's possession where Hindley was standing over where the victims had been buried. Hindley's 17-year-old brother-in-law was also a key witness, which proves to be crucial. Brady denied ever being involved in the crimes, but the overwhelming physical and audio evidence completely shattered the defense because Brady acted like he was just an innocent bystander. They were both found guilty on the 6th of May 1966 after the jury deliberated for just over 2 hours and sentenced to as follows. Brady was sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences and Hindley received 2 life sentences for the unaliving and a 7-year sentence for the harbouring. The UK had abolished the death penalty by that time they were sentenced, so that wasn't available. The 1966 court case did not include the unaliving of Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett because at that time their bodies had never been found and the killers hadn't confessed to the crime. It wasn't until 1985 that Brady and Hindley finally admitted to those unalivings and they were given whole life tariffs. Hindley died from respiratory failure on the 15th of November 2002 at the age of 60, while Brady died on the 15th of May 2017 at the age of 79. He died of natural causes. The families of the victims spent decades of anguish, false hope, and torment, mainly because Brady and Hindley refused to let them know where they were buried. As I said before, Keith Bennett has never been found. Police were deeply affected by the inability to find all the children. When the kids originally went missing, there was a fear around Manchester, with parents afraid to let their children play outside by themselves. Keith Bennett's mother died in 2012 without even knowing where he was buried. The case still remains talked about today because no one could ever believe a woman could get involved with SA and the mystery around where Keith Bennett is buried. I hope I have spoken about this case with good detail and been very respectful, and I hope I told it well, and if not, I do apologise.